Today we are going to be taking a look at double stops. What is a double stop? Can there be triple stops? So on and so forth. Well, a double stop very simply is when you play two notes at the same time, so two strings at the same time. Double stops in orchestral music are pretty commonplace. Triple stops are somewhat challenging and you won't see them too often, at least at this level. Quadruple stops, that's when you're having to play four different strings, happen occasionally. And then the only way you can get up to 5 or 6 or 7 is to have a more than standard string instrument like mine here. So how do we play them? Well, if you go back to when you first started playing these instruments, you probably played two strings at the same time. And you were kind of moving back and forth. And then we worked for a very long time to get down to one string. Well, now we're going to go back and we're going to learn how to unlearn what we just did. So when you're playing one string, you were making sure that you were keeping your bow in a steady line on one string, not moving your elbow up and down, cello bass, not moving your elbow up and down, and that allowed you to play one string. Now we're going to have to drop the elbow or raise the elbow, depending on what strings we're trying to play, to get both strings to sound. The other thing that you're going to have to do is add just a little more arm weight or pressure. You don't want to add too much because, again, when you add too much, one of the strings will crunch. It's just a little bit to get the string to sound out. And then you start learning how to get both. Now, a lot of times, you've probably heard this idea before. Fiddle music, country music. But it happens in other songs as well. It can be used in a whole lot of situations. Now, we associate it with that fiddle style because fiddle players use it most of the time. But it can really add some color to your sound. If I take something simple, so that's J. Ungar's Ashokan Farewell. You can add a whole lot of color and different sound to your instrument just by playing some alternate strings. So when we take a look at 178, so again, a double stop is when two strings are played at the same time. You have two different versions here, and this is just getting you into it. So you start on D string, and then you roll down to get that A string. And then the B version, you start on A, and roll down to get D. Now, word of warning for the basses, you are going to have to use your first finger on your G to get these double stops to sound out like it's written. You can play double stops with or without fingers. You can play both strings with fingers. So that was going from both strings with fingers to one string with fingers. You can play with no fingers, so on and so forth. Okay, so take a moment and play through 178 on your own, feeling where that double stop is happening. 179, double the fun. So we went back and we learned our double stops. We know how to get that other string sounding. Now let's start adding fingers so we can get some different notes and some different sounds. The biggest thing that you're going to have to do, you have to make sure that when you place a finger down, that you're creating the tunnel underneath the finger. So in this example, we start on D, then we get the double stop D and A. Then we're going to add E. Now to get that double stop, we have to make sure our finger is very tall. We also will have to adjust our finger a little bit. First, if your finger isn't tall, you get this squeaky bad sound because you're touching your other string. Then, if you're not adjusting, it's going to sound out of tune. So tall fingers coming straight down onto the fingertip and then adjusting as needed. So here we go, double the fun. The biggest thing, every time you're doing a double stop right now, you're just adding the A string. Okay? And then we're going right back and we've got our other finger happening. So we've got in the first measure for D, next measure is E, F sharp, G, and then back to D. And then the A comes in on the third and fourth beats of each measure, except for the last measure, which is all double stops. So we're going to play through, we're going to listen through, make sure that you're shadowing and you're thinking about each of the notes.
Double the fun.
So make sure you check that tunnel, get your finger up nice and tall. One way that you can check when you place your finger down for E, can you pluck your A string without taking your first finger off? When you play F sharp, can you check that A string? Okay? So keep working on that. Make sure that you got the tunnel, that the double stop is sounding out, and really listen for your intonation. Does it sound in tune? Boil 'em cabbage down with double stops. So now we're getting into some fiddle music. You've already played Boil 'em cabbage down. You've got the standard tune. That kind of idea. Now we're just going to add that A on top of it. Now, when you start doing this, you can hear it in all sorts of different styles. You can hear it with, different rhythms. You can hear it with, slides. And you can start really changing it up and making it sound pretty cool just with adding a couple little extra elements. I'll link below the Mark O'Connor version again, and it's really fun to listen to. All right, so Boil 'em cabbage down with double stops. Make sure that you're hearing the right intonation, that you're listening that you're adjusting your fingers, and make sure that it just sounds dead in tune. Here we go.
Boil them cabbage down with double stops.
that's the basics of double stops. Make sure that you're really looking at that tunnel, that you're really getting that elbow over, tiny bit more pressure, but not too much, and that you're really listening for your intonation.